Opening credits. Pleasing the Queen. Epic fantasy romance short story. By Selina Coffey. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Chapter 1. It doesn't seem real, Alina whispered. Oh, my dearest. Ellieth reached out to take her sister's hand. Her fair hair was caught back in a golden circlet, the gown of black leaching all color from her skin until she looked like a ghost. The weeks spent in the Elven stronghold after her marriage had made her pale, and the shock of their parents' death only accentuated it. Will you be? Her voice trailed away. I'll be well, Alina said, trying to be brave. Her elder sister was worried, as her parents would have been if it had been someone else's death. And Alina did not want anyone to worry over her. It was her parents who deserved sympathy, not she. She was alive, and they. Unexpectedly, a wave of anger swamped her. How could they have been so careless as to go riding together near the Friel River at this time of year? The banks were treacherous, the waters rapid and swollen with snow melt, and her parents had brought no one with them, no one at all. For all their years of telling Ellieth and Alina to be careful, to safeguard themselves as heirs to the throne, their parents had not shown the same caution. What is it? Ellieth asked, coming to stand beside her sister. With a start, Alina realized that she had gone to the little altar at the side of the room, and that she was staring at the portraits of her parents, placed there by a friend to help her pay her respects. In the immediate aftermath of their death, she had hardly stirred from her bed for days, thinking that Ellieth must return and fix this. Ellieth would know what to do. Alina was only the younger daughter. It was only when Ellieth arrived home once more, accompanied by her elven husband, that Alina realized the courtier's words were true. Ellieth had ceded all claim to the human throne. She would not be able to fix anything. It was up to Alina to lead the country through this shock, a fact that had been made even more brutally clear by the coronation worked into the funeral. It has always been thus, Ellieth said, as she put the final touches on Alina's gown. It's barbaric, Alina said simply. A coronation should be a celebration. A coronation needs a death. For a moment, they were just sisters again, bickering. And then they remembered what they were bickering about, and both their faces fell. I can't do this, Alina had pleaded, and Ellieth took her by the shoulders. You will be a kind queen, a wise queen. I promise you that you can do this. But the panic had not receded as they spoke the final prayers for her parents, and it had not receded as Alina was led to the throne. When the priest settled the heavy crown over her brow, she felt only the rising surety that this must be a dream. I can't do this, she said again. She looked up at her sister. Ellieth, you must stay. We'll find a way for you to stay. You'll be queen. I can't be queen, Ellieth said gently. You'll be queen in all but name. They'll accept you. You'll tell me what to do. Alina? Ellieth turned and took her sister's hands in her own. You are more capable than you know. Do you remember our lessons when we were children? You were always cleverer than me. You thought it so unfair that I would take the throne instead of you, and it was. You knew more about our land and its history than I did, and you always understood trade. A shudder recalled what Alina remembered was Ellieth's least favorite topic. Follow your heart, dearest. Take time to think alone and you will make wise decisions. I wish you could stay. Tears filled Alina's eyes. So do I, dearest. But it is perhaps best that I will not be here. A throne with two heirs is unstable. And you have, oh, Alina, tell me you have someone to confide in. At Alina's rueful smile, her sister's gaze sharpened. What is it? Well, it's promise not to be mad. I promise. Ellieth went to one of the armchairs near the fire and gestured for Alina to take the other, waiting for her sister to sit before she did herself. It was just like Ellieth to remember royal etiquette now, of all times. You remember Jameth? Alina asked. It was a rhetorical question. No one could forget Jameth. As the sole human noble with elven blood, he was one of the most achingly beautiful men Alina had ever seen in her life. Ellieth's husband Savin was the man's only rival in looks. Jameth's hair was white blonde, his skin carrying the faintest cast of blue, and his eyes were as piercing and deep as sapphires. And of course Ellieth would remember him for another reason as well. Before her marriage to Savin, an alliance forged in desperation against the dragon incursions, Ellieth had been betrothed to Jameth. The two of them, fair and blue-eyed, would have made an almost twin-like pair, and an exceedingly beautiful one at that. "You are?" Ellieth's brow furrowed, but to Alina's relief, the woman appeared more amused than anything. "You are betrothed to Jameth?" "Oh no," Alina assured her. "No, not that. But he is quite a good adviser. He and I speak often." "Yes, he was always very wise," Ellieth said, chewing her lip. She frowned. "I hope he is not upset that he and I—" "No," Alina said, smiling. "That match was made by neither of you. And frankly, you're both too serious for it to work." Ellieth laughed at that, and Alina smiled. She had always had an excellent sense of humor, but one that slipped quickly beneath seriousness and urgency. It was a wonder that Savin, as quiet as he was, had brought her to life as he had, but in their quiet camaraderie, the two of them shared amusement as well as love. Alina swallowed, looking away. She did not envy her sister, going to live in a foreign court, being torn from everything she loved so abruptly. But Ellieth, if she had nothing else, had love. Against all odds, she and Savin had made a love match, and their companionship filled Alina with jealousy. She had never particularly cared for the idea of marriage, finding men to be handsome enough but hardly engaging. Only now when she must rule, when she must guide a nation, she very much wished she had someone at her side that she might return to at the day's end, instead of this empty chamber. "What is it?" Ellieth asked, and Alina sighed, leaning her crowned head back on the chair. I wish I had what you have." Ellieth looked down, her face grave. "I know," Alina told her. "I know there's no reason to expect it. Before you married, I never would have looked for anything more than a good alliance and simple kindness. I know how royal marriages are made. I never even felt I needed someone." "Be careful," Ellieth told her, raising those sapphire eyes to stare at her sister. "Alina, you are grieving, and you will be vulnerable to those who claim to have all the answers. There will be people who will try to manipulate you, try to make you believe you cannot live without them." "I know," Alina said, nettled. "I am not a fool." "Not in the slightest, dearest. But you are human, and you are alone." "Are you telling me to be wary of Jameth?" Alina asked, her voice very small. "I don't think so. All I ask, little sister, is that you listen to your heart. It has never led you astray yet, has it? Remember when we saw the fairies that one day, out near the river? I wanted to chase them, but you pulled me back and tore my dress. And you were right, they were leading us to a fairy circle, and we would never have gotten home again. Promise me that no matter how bad it gets, how lonely you feel, how sure of themselves others seem to be, you will not let them rule this country instead of you." I will try." But something in Ellieth's urgency scared her. "What is it? What do you fear?" Ellieth stood, pacing, her arms wrapped around herself. "Alina, I think I am going mad sometimes. But others, it seems clear as day. Mother and father would never have been so careless as to ride at the river without a guard. They would never have ridden there at all, you and I both know it." "Oh gods!" Alina stood. "You can't think." "I don't know what to think." Ellieth's voice rose and she turned away. "It is madness that speaks to me. It is grief. But Alina, please be careful. You were always cleverer than me. Be wise now." When a knock sounded at the door, they both jumped, but it was only Savin, sticking his black head around the door. His eyes flicked between them, taking in Ellieth's tempest of emotion and Alina's rising fear, but he said nothing about it, only slid into the room. "Sister-in-law," he said gravely to Alina, "Your Majesty, I fear I must call Ellieth away." Alina nodded. Before, she had wondered how she could bear to be alone with few friends. Now, at the thought of Ellieth leaving, her wondering had turned to a pit of cold despair. She must not go, she must stay and give Alina counsel. But Ellieth was needed. Ellieth had been sent to her own court alone as well, and she had found something beautiful there. Alina smiled wanly at the sight of her sister arm in arm with Savin. It was impossible to begrudge them the happiness they clearly shared. Be wise. Her sister's words echoed in her head, as Alina climbed the battlements and watched them ride away on the long road out of Terrestra. Follow your heart. The advice should make her feel hope. So why did she feel as if she was so terribly alone? Chapter 2. Promises have been made, Your Majesty, one of the counselors protested. His black robes flapped around him in the breeze from the windows. No, they haven't, Alina pointed out. Not by me in any case. There was an uncomfortable silence, and she tried her hardest not to look uncertain as she stared the counselors down. They looked at one another, men and women with old pinched faces and the sort of sneer that said they thought Alina was young and impressionable. The fact that the sneers were beginning to turn into looks of wariness filled Alina with equal parts satisfaction and trepidation. They should learn not to underestimate her, she thought firmly. They were her counselors and they advised her, but she was their queen, and she made the decisions. Surely they had never questioned her father and mother, as they questioned her. But Your Majesty, one of them said now, her tone suddenly ingratiating. Surely you must agree that selling our grain within our borders is the best plan of action. The farmers agree. If the farmers agree, then there should be no trouble with my lifting the trade embargoes, Alina pointed out coolly. But it troubles me that our farmers would rather sell within the country, for much lower prices, than trade with neighboring kingdoms. She tried to refrain from sighing and rubbing at her forehead. It was a beautiful day outside, and she wished she were out riding with Jameth instead of stuck in this room, arguing with the people who were supposed to support her. Have regional relations grown tense? There is some resentment between the Ice Elves and Terrestra, yes. I've never heard mention of it. Alina met the counselor's eyes steadily. No doubt yes, your father would not have wanted to worry you. My father and mother, Alina said, trying not to grip the arms of the chair too obviously, were always more interested in trade than they were in war. Was it just her imagination, or did dislike skitter across the faces of her counselors? Your parents, one of them began, and another shushed him. He gave what was ostensibly a smile, but looked more like a grimace. I see, Alina said, looking around at all of them. Well, thank you for your counsel. I shall think on this. And should we tell the troops to march to the western border? One of the counselors asked smoothly. First you mention trade, then some resentment, then ask me about sending our soldiers. What is it that is happening on the western border? Nothing you need concern yourself with, Your Majesty. If I'm sending my troops, Alina snapped, I will indeed be concerned. There was a stony silence. Your Majesty is wise to approach the decision with such gravity, one of them said finally, bowing low so that Alina could not see his face. We are certain that you will make the correct decision. Thank you, Alina said with as much warmth as she could muster. Something told her that this assurance was far from sincere. Now, if you will excuse me, I must tour the outlying holdings. Your Majesty, there is one more matter. A woman spoke up from the corner of the room. Yes. Please let her not sound like a petulant child. Alina wanted only to flee, but she knew she must not let them think she was frivolous or lazy. The matter of Your Majesty's marriage, the counselor said. Ah. Alina smiled. This she would stay for. A friend, a confidant, someone she could trust to hold Terrestra's interests in as high a stead as she did. Counselors were all well and good, but her mother had once told her that only those who wore the crown could truly understand the weight of it. She was glad to see now that her council wanted her married. I will count on all of you to submit your recommendations to me then. Surely you all have valuable insights regarding the eligible noblemen of our kingdom. She had meant it to soothe them, for she knew that the choice of a consort was often a fraught endeavor, pitting regional and family alliances against one another. She expected her counselors to leap forward with their suggestions, denigrating each other's choices, but to her surprise, the council was remarkably reserved. One such gentleman will arrive at court shortly, the woman said, smiling. Gareth of Veston. He has come to pay his respects to your majesty, on your ascension to the throne. Better he had come to her coronation, to pay his respects to her parents' reign, but Alina did not say that. I will rely upon you to look at his credentials and character, and arrange a meeting, she said, favoring the woman with a smile. One must always show the greatest respect for a counselor's opinion. And the rest of you must submit your recommendations to me as well. You are all dismissed. Blessings upon your majesty. But their chorus was more subdued than she would have expected, calm and entirely without the animated conflict that often accompanied their exit from her presence. Alina watched them go, frowning, and then shook her head and strode purposefully out onto the battlements. The council chambers were situated for the best view of the sole road leading into the castle, so that the councillors might assess any invading force at a glance. But it had been years since Terrestra went to war, and in any case Alina could hardly think of such matters today. The weather was perfect, the late spring air holding the promise of summer's heat, and Alina had been looking forward to the day's ride all week. She smiled as she descended the steep stairs to the courtyard, nodding to pay her respects to the soldiers who climbed past her with crisp salutes and murmured blessings. When she was in the council chamber, surrounded by reports of problems and discontent, she worried that she was a very poor ruler indeed, but when she saw her subjects, she noticed that they smiled at her without reserve. Perhaps, she thought, she should ask them what they thought of war with the ice elves. All thoughts disappeared, however, when she saw Jameth waiting. His white blonde hair had been drawn back into an ornate braid, another nod to his elven heritage, and his clothes, though simply cut, were of the finest deep blue silks and velvets, making his eyes shine brightly in his beautiful face. You look very fine today, she said with a smile, noting that the pale blue of her own gown was complemented by his attire. Your Majesty is kind, he told her, bowing, and I do not wish to shame her as I ride through the farms with her. Alina laughed and let him swing her up into the saddle of her horse, a roan mare whose coat had been brushed until it gleamed. It is I who always have dust on my hem, and my hair escaping its braid. I should think I would shame you. Never, he assured her. You are the queen, and to your subjects you shine as brightly as the sun. It was the over-sweet flattery of courtly love, the sort of flirtation that every courtier engaged in, and Alina had never put much stock by it. But when Jameth spoke, no matter the nonsensical words, she heard true kindness in his tone. Tell me, she said as they set off. Is it true that there is war brewing in the west? Or? Jameth looked over at her, his brow furrowed. I have heard no such rumors. Neither had I, and yet my council tells me to send troops. Can it possibly be so bad? I shouldn't think so, Alina said, examining the earliest spring planting and waving to the farmers. She looked over at Jameth and frowned. It seems to me that if it were serious enough to send troops, I would already know, and if not, sending troops can hardly improve things. And more to the point, where are these troops coming from? He asked, frowning back. Aren't most of ours still training at Elfame? I hadn't even thought of that. Alina rubbed her forehead, then recalled that she was in plain sight of her subjects. I'm not doing very well at this, am I? You're questioning whether or not you should be sending troops. That's a good first step. Jameth smiled at her. Now you just need to get your council to talk about something other than war. Actually, Alina confided, they're talking about marriage too. There was a silence so long that she looked over, and found him staring away from her. At length he said simply, Oh? Yes. Their first candidate is arriving soon, I hear. Gareth of Veston. I'm not sure I know him. Has he been to court before? Is he terribly old? Gareth of Veston? You know him? Alina asked eagerly. Jameth now looked profoundly troubled. We trained together for some years. Sword fighting, history, that sort of thing. You don't like him, Alina observed. It's not, well, I haven't seen him since he was 15. The lords of Veston rarely venture out of their stronghold. But there have always been rumors, you see. They say every once in a while that Veston was once its own country, conquered in the name of Terrestra, and that as kings in their own right, they should have equal claim to the throne. What? Alina drew her horse up and stared at him. And my counselors want me to marry this man? He was only a boy when he said such things, Jameth assured her. Perhaps he is different now. Perhaps? Alina shook her head, then brightened. Perhaps they wish to do away with the bad feelings of other generations. They want Vestin to know that it is valued. And it would give them the troops they need, Jameth murmured. Vestin controls an army nearly the size of yours. Alina. He looked over at her, then blushed. Your Majesty. I apologize. Your Majesty, he is but one suitor. Perhaps you are correct, and they seek only to right old wrongs. It is what you would do, I think. Yes, Alina said, nodding and trying to suppress the flicker of fear she felt. Do not be so worried, her companion said. Think clearly and make wise decisions, and you shall be a wonderful queen. Thank you, Alina said, smiling. She felt warm all over. She would have to tell Jameth someday how much he had helped her through this dark time, but the thought of saying such words aloud made her want to sink into the floor. She ducked her head to hide her blush and urged her horse forward, looking away so that he would not notice her embarrassment, or the smile that seemed permanently affixed to her face when she was in his presence. Chapter 3. The music swirled above the ballroom, beautiful and lush, and Alina laughed as Jameth whirled her around the dance floor. Her bronze hair had been dressed with little white flowers spun by the royal mages, lit from within and trailing motes of light as she danced, and her gown was a waterfall of white silk and satin swinging out behind her as she twirled. She was to be radiant, the seamstress said, a young queen, a summer queen, clothed in white and gold with diamonds at her ears and pearls at her wrists. And Alina did look exquisite, she knew. She looked like a bride, and for just a moment she let herself imagine that this was her wedding night and Jameth was her bridegroom, and that the murmurs and blessings she heard from her courtiers were wishes for a happy marriage and observations of what a beautiful couple they made. They would dance the night away, and laugh as they toasted one another with sips of champagne, and at the end of the night. Her cheeks flamed. What is it? Jameth's voice was low, sending a thrill of happiness down her spine. He had leaned close to be heard over the sound of the music, and Alina knew that if she looked up, her lips would nearly be touching his. She shook her head slightly, willing the color to fade from her cheeks even as she felt herself yearning towards him in the dance. It was over a moment later, much too soon, and Alina joined Jameth in applauding the musicians, whose platform moved slowly above the dance floor as they played. We should find some wine, Jameth said, tucking her hand into the crook of his arm. Yes, Alina said, smiling up at him at last. And may I say, Your Majesty? Your Majesty. A counselor's voice rang out, discordant, and Alina suppressed the
censored
to round on him and snarl. Yes. If her smile was a bit brittle, surely no one would notice. What is it? Sir Gareth of Vestin has arrived, Your Majesty. The counselor held out his arm, glaring at Jameth. He wishes to offer you a tribute. Of course, Alina said, trying not to sigh. There was only one correct thing to do, and that thing was not sneaking off with Jameth to find wine. When she looked around at him, however, he was gone entirely. Suppressing a wave of disappointment, and a pulse of jealousy, wondering who else he might dance with, Alina ignored the counselor's outstretched arm and made for the throne. She had hardly seated herself when Gareth swept from the shadows, and she lost her breath. He was beautiful enough that her knees went weak, his dark hair swept over his brow, skin browned by the sun, and full lips that Alina could feel vividly against her skin.
Censored.
Down along her throat.
Censored.
Dragging along.
Censored.
She swallowed hard and clutched at the arms of the throne. What had come over her? Certainly the man was good-looking, with broad shoulders and a way of moving that hinted at rippling muscles beneath his doublet. His body would be hard against hers as he slid inside her, she knew, and she would moan and beg him for more. Gods above. She drew her eyes up to his, and hoped she wasn't blushing as hard as she felt she was. Sir Gareth, she said, her voice impressively steady. Your Majesty. His very voice was a seduction. I wish you health and happiness for your reign, like your namesake before you. Well remembered, Alina said, charmed in spite of herself. Alina I had reigned for 85 years over 3 centuries ago, and her time on the throne had been known as a golden age for Terrestra. I offer you this, Gareth said, opening a carved wooden box and brushing aside velvet to show a purplish-blue gem set in gold. A fine jewel for one so lovely. But a bauble, I'm afraid. Your gift is received with joy, Alina said, hoping she managed to infuse warmth into the proscribed words of thanks. At her counselor's meaningful head jokers, she gestured to a chair near the throne. Please sit with me. Tell me the news from Vestin. Far to the northwest, Vestin was remote enough that the small pieces of news the queen would normally know, births, deaths, flirtations, were all cloaked in secrecy. Vestin prospers, Gareth said, settling himself down without a word of thanks. His black eyes met hers with a troubling familiarity, a knowing smile that made her want to blush. Could he possibly know the shameful visions she'd had? That is good. The visions had returned with a vengeance, and she was starting to shake. Alina wanted this man as she had never wanted anyone before in her life. She didn't want him at all. The though penetrated dimly, and she clenched her fingers against the corners of the wooden box, the stab of pain helping her focus. These visions were not her own, and she would not give in. It was very kind of you to journey so far, Alina told her guest. His smile chilled her. He knew of the spell, she realized. Perhaps it was his own. He had come here intending to seduce her, to make her fall helplessly in love with him, and now that he saw the flicker of awareness in her eyes, the visions returned with the force of a tempest, sweeping through her until she shuddered with the promise of pleasure. If you will excuse me, there is business to attend to. Alina stood, hoping she was not swaying. Please be merry. Dance. I am sure we shall meet again before you return to Vestin. I think I will remain for some time. His voice was a threat, a promise of his own inevitable triumph. She could hear the true words he intended to speak, ringing clearly in her head. How long do you think you can hold out, Your Majesty? She had to get out of there. She would go to the battlements, where the evening air still held winter's chill. Alina hurried from the ballroom, stopping abruptly when her counselors appeared before her. You should dance with Lord Gareth, one of them advised her, gently ushering her back into the room. Marriage with him would make a powerful alliance, murmured another. And how very charming he is, a third said brightly. That's very kind of you, but you see, I hate him. No, she couldn't say that, and she certainly could not tell them what the man had done. The very thought of speaking it aloud made her want to be anywhere else. I don't think I will marry him, Alina said firmly. So any further candidates you have are most welcome. I shall return shortly to dance with them. Gareth of Vestin is the best choice, one of the counselors said firmly. Your Majesty, you asked for our recommendation and you have it. He is the man you should marry. He has the army to lead Terrestra to great victories. What victories? Alina asked, exasperated. Now that she had been away from Gareth and his charms, the heat of pleasure fading from her, she was shivering. Terrestra has no enemies now that we're aligned with the elves. Your Majesty, one of them said firmly, you must marry Gareth of Vestin. Promises have not been made, Alina snapped. She swept away without another word. Fury was coursing through her as she strode out onto the battlements. Promises had been made? Had her council dared to promise Gareth of Vestin that she would marry him? And if so, why? Why would they ever presume such a thing? Armies. Victories. But what victories they meant, Alina could not say. She had spoken the truth, Terrestra had no enemies. The ice elves to the west traded beautiful goods for Terrestrian grain, and were far too weak militarily to be a threat, even if they wished to be. She bit her lip. As far as she knew, there had never even been a hint of tension between the two nations. She sank her head into her hands and groaned in frustration. The visions were fainter now, but they still whispered in her head, promises of pleasure and
censored.
That made her furious all over again. If Gareth of Vestin wished to marry her, he could have courted her, could have been kind to her. Everyone knew that royal marriages were about alliance instead of love. The only purpose to this could be if he wanted. What? But Alina knew, he wanted her not to be able to think when he was near. He wanted her under his spell, entirely devoted to him, driven to the brink of madness by her own.
Censored.
A flash of shadow caught in the corner of her eye, and she could have laughed with relief. Jameth stood alone, looking out over the valley below. Smiling, Alina picked up her skirts and made her way to her friend's side. Chapter 4. Jameth? He whirled. Alina? I mean If I hear another Your Majesty tonight, I will go insane, Alina said precisely. She shivered convulsively. Here. Jameth took the cloak from his shoulders and draped it around hers. It was warm and she could smell the faint pine scent of his cologne. Here, in the cold of the night and near the warmth of his body, his scent winding around her, Alina trembled at the memory of her visions. They were not hers, she told herself fiercely. Not hers at all. If she followed her heart, she would follow it. What is it? Jameth's hands were at her arms. Alina, you look terrified. I had a very unpleasant experience. What happened to you? What did he do? I don't think I can tell you. Alina looked up, and at the look in his eyes she wrenched herself back. I can't tell anyone. Shame burned in her cheeks. You can tell me anything. I swear to you, Alina, if he hurt you I will kill him. I will drag him before the council and I'm not sure they would help. Alina looked away. They seem so determined that I marry him. I think even if I told them what he did, they wouldn't care. Alina. His hand on her shoulder urged her around. What did he do? Please don't bear this alone. He swallowed. Please let me help. You'll think less of me. But then her mind cleared. Why should she be ashamed? The visions were none of her doing. They were a trick played by a power-hungry man, a depraved man. He spun some enchantment on me. He did? Jameth's pale brows went up. I'd heard he was a talented sorcerer, but... Alina, what sort of enchantments? They were... his...
Censored.
Dragging over her skin, his fingers parting her, and the sound of her own moans echoing in her ears as she cried out his name. They were, he wanted me to...
Censored.
Him. He showed me visions. The word hardly seemed adequate. She was there more than she was here, silk on her skin and the feel of his hands cupping her hips, and when he parted her, Alina whirled away, twisting her hands in her hair. He's going to drive me mad, they won't stop. Jameth growled, low in his throat. That he should treat you so, treat anyone so, but Alina, you are his queen. He owes you his loyalty. And he thinks me weak. Alina felt the tears start. He was watching me, waiting to see when I would break, when I would beg him for what he kept showing me. He wanted, I can't bear it.
Censored.
Is easy to evoke in a spell. Jameth put a hand tentatively on her arm, and when she looked over at him, he smiled and then laughed suddenly. The fact that you resisted him and came out here must have confounded him. Really? It's primal, Alina. Like a nightmare. Playing with the subject's mind is a spell we aren't even taught, and for this reason. It's far, far too easy. He most likely thought you'd fall into his arms then and there, and declare him your consort. And instead you came out here. Ah, that's rich. Well, I'm glad you're amused. I'm amazed, he corrected softly. His fingers reached up to cup the side of her face, and his eyes were suddenly very warm. You're stronger than you know, Alina. You resisted. It wasn't my...
Censored.
Alina told him, uncomprehending. He painted the pictures with his own.
Censored.
But I didn't.
Censored.
Him. They weren't my fantasies. The words made her blush, and she ducked her head. And do you? His voice trailed away. Somehow his hand had come to rest on her hip, and the fingers clenched slightly. What do you?
Censored.
Alina? It was strange, really. Until he asked, she had not understood her own mind. All these months she had seen him and smiled at his company and thought of him when he was away, and yet she had never understood what she wanted until he asked her like this, so close she could feel the heat of his body and the evidence of his own.
Censored.
She only looked up at him, and he hesitated for a moment that felt like an age, while she swayed towards him. When his mouth came down on hers, there was no gentleness. He pulled her close, and she pressed herself against his body, feeling him hard against her and feeling the rush, 100 times more powerful, of her own.
Censored.
The visions faded and returned, changed. Jameth's hands on her, his lips on her.
Censored.
Her legs around his waist. His
Censored.
parted her lips urgently, and she would have fallen if she could not lean against him, and if his hand did not cup her head to hold her close. Oh gods! His hand slid around to her ass and cupped it. When she moaned and shifted, his hand clenched and he joked against her. Alina, I have to, we cannot. I want you, Alina whispered recklessly. Don't say we cannot. I want you. You are my queen, he whispered, his mouth at her throat as she arched her back to press herself close. I cannot, Alina, tell me to go and I will leave, I promise. Come to my rooms, Alina whispered, a breath, a plea. She was twisting in his arms, so wet between her legs that she could hardly stand. She needed him inside her, and she needed it now. She would let him take her here on the battlement, if he wanted. Do not ask it of me. If I come to your rooms, I swear you will not leave still a maiden. It would be unfitting. I want you. Alina reached out, and laid a finger against his lips. He thought her innocent, she knew it. But he did not know what she had dreamed in the darkness, how she had explored her body with her fingers, how she had listened to the whispered stories of the other girls. Now she could not bear the thought that he would walk away because she was his queen, to be promised in marriage. That they might part after this, to marry in arranged matches, was too much to bear. But worse was the idea that they might never have this at all. Please, Jameth. I want this. Their breath mingled in the cold air. Don't you? He groaned, burying his face in her shoulder. Come to my rooms, Alina whispered again, and this time he took her hand and
Censored.
it, lips traveling over her fingers and, as he turned her hand, onto the soft skin of her wrist. Alina caught her breath. The tramp of boots on stone recalled them, and they ran, laughing like children, racing to keep ahead of the patrol and ducking into the shadows as they passed by the ballroom. Alina's blood was pounding, and she kept her fingers laced with his, throwing open the door to her rooms and motioning him to stay back while she made sure there was no one there to see them.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
What is it? She propped herself on her elbow to look at him. Fear flickered when he would not look at her. Jameth, what is it? I do not like this, he murmured. She recoiled as if he had slapped her. Did I trap you into this? Oh no. He was at her side in a moment. No, Alina, not this, not us. It's everything else. The way he manipulated you, the way your council has only one candidate for marriage. Ever since your parents went off that cliff, I've wondered. So close to Ellieth's words. Alina felt chilled and then shook her head. They went into the river, Jameth. No. He looked over at her, frowning. I was sent to recover their bodies, but we never did. Their bodyguard saw them fall, and then nothing. Lost? They told us, they told me and Ellieth, they said it was the river. And they would never have gone to the cliffs, it was where my uncle fell to his death. And they didn't have a bodyguard with them at all. She rounded on him. Who? Who was the bodyguard? I don't know, he's... Too many unanswered questions, Alina whispered. Ellieth was right. You're right. She said it was madness, but she was right. Say it, Jameth said, and Alina knew that she had to. She could not let this be cloaked in shadows any longer. They were murdered, she whispered. He nodded, jokingly. Alina, I am so sorry. Yes. Her voice sounded like it did not belong to her. In a flash she seemed to split into two people, one yearning for comfort and the other cold and hard. We need a plan, she heard herself say. We need to find them and make them confess the truth. Chapter 5. Your Majesty? The voice echoed through the darkened council chamber, and Alina smiled in the shadows. Are you here? Thank you for coming to meet me. Alina stepped into one of the long stripes of moonlight along the floor, suppressing her smile as the counselor jumped and swore. She must not laugh right now. She must not look confident. I could only trust you, she whispered, and she knew she saw a flash of cruelty in the woman's eyes before she nodded. Of course, Your Majesty. How can I aid you? She had to come closer. Alina turned away, sinking into one of the chairs around the council chamber. I think I'm in danger. Oh, Your Majesty, surely not. I do. Alina hung her head and let her shoulders shake, and the woman came close, quiet as a snake, her hand on Alina's shoulder. When Alina only pretended to cry, the woman took another chair and drew it close. That was her chance. Alina moved fast as a cat, drawing the woman's hand close and slipping a bracelet over her wrist. She held the woman's hand and yanked her close, eyes boring close. Magic, she whispered. A death spell I can activate with a word. Your Majesty, how have I offended? The woman was on her knees in a moment, wrists outstretched desperately. What have I done? You have plotted to ruin my family, Alina hissed. And as far as I am concerned, you can pay for it with your life. As the woman fell forward genuflecting, Alina stood and moved away, flicking her skirts out of the way of the counselor's grasping hands. Please, Your Majesty, I beg you, anything, I'm loyal. I already know that you are not, Alina said, unmoved. And so you shall die in agony. That is what I have decided. Your Majesty, please. Of course, Alina said thoughtfully, judging the moment right. If you were to tell me the whole story, if you were to tell me who else might be to blame, perhaps I could bring myself only to throw you into the dungeon for the rest of your miserable life. It was a bargain the counselor would never have taken, but everyone knew what death spells could do. Everyone had heard of the agony they inflicted. The woman was blubbering, crawling across the ground, desperate for mercy. I'll tell you, she sobbed. I'll tell you anything. Good. A rustle caught her attention and Alina turned sharply, but as the moments passed, nothing moved in the darkness, and she turned back to ascend to her throne, sitting and gazing impassively down at the woman. Tell me everything then. It was Sir Gareth, the woman whimpered. It was his plan. Alina only waited, silently. The woman looked up and her queen gazed back. He told us he could make us more powerful than kings, all of us. The woman sniffled. He told us of the riches we could have if we only conquered the ice mountains and Elfame, riches your father and mother refused to seize. Her eyes came up, dark and resentful, but when Alina raised her hand as if to release a spell, the woman screamed. I am sorry, Your Majesty. I should not have said such a thing. No, Alina said coldly. You should not have. So what did Gareth tell you to do? He told us to deliver him the lands to the west, and to take steps to conquer Elfame and what? My patience is growing thin, counselor. If you cannot provide more than I could have guessed on my own. No, please. He told us to conquer those lands with the royal troops. We were to expand the kingdom, and when he came to power he would make us his governors. She was sniveling. I see. So what did you do? We tried to persuade your father and mother to go to war, the woman said, her voice trembling. But they would not. We asked Gareth to make his coup now and go to war after, but he would not do it. So we tried to turn your sister to our cause. Ellieth? Had these people ever met Ellieth? The woman was incorruptible. She would not listen to us. The woman's voice was mulish. We sent her all the charms Gareth said to turn her head and make her ask for a new betrothal, but she would not be moved. They had done the same thing to Ellieth that they had done to her. Alina's blood boiled with fury and she clenched her hands. And so when she would not be persuaded. We begged Sir Gareth for help, but he said we must come up with our own solution or we were not worthy to be his governors. Her words trailed away into silence, and Alina did not move. And then what, counselor? We did not know what to do. We thought all was lost. But then your sister was married to the elf. Her voice twisted with scorn. Savin. His name is Savin. Call him what you will, he is not human. Very well. Alina resisted the urge to wave a hand. She had no time for such petty grudges. So Ellieth was removed. And that left your parents and you. The woman swallowed, clearly terrified. Begging your pardon, your majesty. It took a moment to make sense. You thought you could turn me, Alina said slowly. You thought that where Ellieth had been strong, I would be weak. I? Answer me. Yes. Your majesty. And so you killed my parents, Alina said softly. Guilt was tumbling over in her head. She had tried all her life to be kind and gracious. And now that very sentiment had cost her parents their lives. How did you do it? She managed, gritting her teeth. We told them you had been kidnapped, that the kidnappers demanded to meet with them. The woman was trying to scrabble away, but her fear of the bracelet kept her rooted in place. They went to the cliffs to search for you. And you had them assassinated, Alina whispered, grief rising up in her throat. You. Your Majesty, you promised that if I told the truth. You shall rot in the lowest dungeon I can find, Alina whispered through gritted teeth, because it is not worth having your soul on my conscience. You committed murder for nothing more than a pretty house and some gold coins, counselor, and I will see you ruined for it. Oh, I think not. The voice was smooth and deep, and it turned Alina's blood to ice. I? She whirled, just in time to see Gareth of Veston step from the shadows. You. Me. And she was alone, with a counselor who did not truly have a death spell on her wrist, and no other allies to count on. Where was Jameth? What had happened? I don't think anyone's coming to save you, Gareth told her. He circled her, and Alina felt her breath coming short. But truly, my queen, you need not fear your fate. You shall have quite a pleasant life as my bride. His fingers reached to trail down her throat. I will never be your bride. Alina pushed his hands away, gritting her teeth. No. He smiled. You will be my little pet, and quite an exquisite one. Such fire in you, your majesty. I could see
censored
in your eyes when we first met, and yet you fought me. You should leave now, Alina hissed, while you still have the chance. Walk away. And give you up? Oh no, my dear. I think it will be much more fun to break you. The visions came in a rush, Alina astride his hips, riding him as she had Jameth, moaning for the feel of him inside her, face down on the bed, pressing her hips up to urge him deeper inside her. Her,
censored,
on the floor at his feet, taking him in her mouth, stroking him with her hands. She could see the
censored
in his eyes, she could feel the
censored
he pulled from deep in her soul. Not his, the
censored
wasn't his. Alina struggled back, clenching her hands, but his hands were on her now, and she could not tell if that was the vision or the truth. She moaned at his touch, crying out and wanting. I won't be yours. You don't have a choice, he whispered in her ear. I think she does. Jameth's voice cut through the visions, and Alina staggered away, gasping, as the tramp of soldiers sounded in the hallways. They marched through the doorways, in from the battlements, and the last thing Alina saw before darkness claimed her was the sight of Gareth being hauled away in chains. Chapter 6. We should go out, Alina whispered, laughing against Jameth's mouth. Oh, just a few more moments. His grin was infectious, and he looked meaningfully to where her hands were pressed against his,
censored,
and stroking at his arms. And anyway, I can't leave until you release me. Unfair. Alina thwacked him with her bouquet. You started it. Oh no, as I recall, you came into my rooms.
Censored.
That was 3 days ago. And I am still unable to recover from it, Jameth said with mock dignity. I am tortured by the memory of my queen's beauty. I fear I must see it again, or I will expire. That's all very well, Alina said, giggling as she wrapped her arms around his shoulders, but we have to go get married now. Are you two in here? Ellieth's voice filtered through from the other room, and Alina pushed herself away from Jameth hurriedly. From her sister's raised eyebrow, the sight of them both blushing, their breath coming in little gasps, was quite enough of a clue. Ellieth crossed her arms. "Everyone's waiting for you," she said briskly. "You'll have enough time for that later." "Are you sure?" Alina asked, but her sister took her hand and dragged her away. "You get to the altar," she called over her shoulder, and Jameth winked at Alina before slipping away. "I'm sorry," Alina said humbly. "Don't be, I was only teasing." Ellieth smiled and wrapped her in a hug. "I've never seen you so happy before, my dearest." "I don't think I ever have been so happy before, and—" Alina stopped, biting her lip. "Is that the most terrible thing to say? With father and mother and—" "They would be so proud of you," Ellieth whispered. There were tears in her eyes, and she clasped Alina's hands in her own. "You brought a murderer to justice, resisted such vile mind spells. And Terrestra is prospering under your leadership, my dear. You are doing wonderfully." "Thank you." Alina hugged her sister again, as the processional music began. "I should wait." "What?" "You're pregnant," Alina said delightedly. A tiny bump showed on her sister's slim body, and Alina laughed delightedly. "Does Savin know?" "Yes. I was sick as a dog on the journey here. There was really no way to hide it. Did you know Elven women don't get sick when they're with child? It's terribly unfair. But that's not important." Ellieth was smiling. Go get married." "Yes. Married." Alina looped her arm through her sister's and swallowed. "Oh, now I'm nervous." "Just keep smiling." And Ellieth led her out into the cathedral, to the roar of approval that waited for them. Alina gasped. She had never imagined anything like this. The white columns were covered with sprays of lilies and golden ribbons, and the marble floor was strewn with rose petals. Her courtiers were a vision in their finest clothing, jewels glittering from pendants and bracelets and gowns. They clapped and cheered, nearly drowning out the music as Ellieth led her sister to the front of the vaulted hall. She had seen Jameth only moments before, but she still caught her breath to see him waiting for her. He was resplendent in blue and gold, his boots of supple black leather and his hair braided back as exquisitely as Savin's. Jameth's eyes, as Alina approached, were so warm and deep that she thought she might fall into them entirely. The service passed in a blur. Alina could remember Jameth's eyes and her own happiness, and then there was cheering and she was swept into his arms as the courtiers clapped and whistled. They were swept into the banquet hall in a tide of people, deposited at the dais with everyone watching as they climbed to their thrones, and the cheering grew even louder to see Alina no longer sitting alone. "This is a perfect day," she whispered to Jameth, and he smiled. "You say that, but we got interrupted before the service." Alina snorted into her wine. "We could sneak behind the throne." "A fine suggestion. Shall we wait until after dinner, or go now?" But a moment later, there was the call for a
censored,
and after that came the dinner with toast upon toast as each course was marched up from the kitchens and paraded along the main aisle. Marzipan cakes made to look like the palace, piles of the ripest, sweetest fruit, roast pig, and barrels upon barrels of wine. Even before the dinner was over, the music rose above the fray and courtiers began to dance, a few humans and elves making eyes at one another while Ellieth and Savin looked on indulgently. It was Ellieth who led Alina out first, dancing as the two of them used to dance in the schoolroom, whirling and whirling until they were dizzy. When Savin led Alina out next, she smiled up at him and accepted his grave, serious advice for rulership with the warm glow of the very drunk. It seemed hours until she was able to dance with Jameth. But once she was in his arms, there seemed to be nothing and no one else. She smiled as they whirled up and down the aisle between the tables, courtiers calling out blessings and raining rose petals down on their heads. The sky above had been magic to look like the night sky, and Alina could not think of a more perfect night. They were escorted to the royal chambers by custom, ribald suggestions being called from within the group, and Alina was escorted inside by her ladies-in-waiting to be unlaced from her gown. "Are you nervous?" Ellieth asked archly. She was laughing along with the rest of them. Stop it. Alina threw her circlet of flowers and Ellieth ducked, laughing. Well, then we shall go. She
censored
Alina on the cheek. Many blessings upon you, sister. You have everything you have ever wanted. May you be this happy all your days. And they were gone, the door closing behind them as Jameth was pushed through to the sound of cheers. They were in one another's arms the next moment. Jameth picked her up and carried her to the bed, staring at the exquisite nightgown for a moment before ripping it open by force while Alina laughed. She fumbled to get his clothes off of him, desperate for his touch. They did not even manage to get his clothing off before he was inside her, moving while she locked her hips around his waist and cried out in pleasure. I have been thinking of this for days. May you never have to wait so long again. His lips worked on her skin, and he laughed low in his throat when she moaned. How kind of you, Your Majesty. Alina bit her lip on the title, watching as his eyes darkened with pleasure. I can see that council meetings with you will be interesting. Indeed they will. Just remember. He
censored
deep. For every moment you tease me, I will tease you. For every promise you whisper before our meetings, I will come up with 3 before the next. I will torment you until you can hardly sit still to listen to them drone on about trade, and flags and buffalo. Alina laughed, pushing him over on his back to ride him. Her nightgown hung from her shoulders in shreds, and she knew she looked like a vision in white and gold, the firelight in her hair and Jameth's hands on her hips as she worked over him slowly, bringing them both to the edge and stopping. You are an evil woman. His fingers raked down her back, and an open palm smacked against her ass. Not half so evil as you. You be careful. I'll prove that. His back was arched. Alina, my love, you are driving me mad.
This scene has been censored to provide a safe and enjoyable reading experience for everyone.
Thank you for reading my book. If you like this story, I think you'll enjoy my book Destiny of the Dragon Prince. A big favor to ask. I would really love it if you could take a few seconds to leave me a review. Thank you so much in advance. About the author. Selina Coffey is a romance writer who lives happily in London with her husband and son. She is a hopeless romantic who grew up always believing in love, and she is not ashamed to admit this. It is this belief that makes her so passionate about writing crazy love stories. A stereotypical girly girl, she loves shopping. So whenever she gets a chance and the spare cash, you will probably find her browsing online for the next pair of shoes to add to her collection. You can find her online at www.selinacoffey.com. Contact her at hello@selinacoffey.com. Closing credits. This has been Pleasing the Queen. Written by Selina Coffey. Auto-narrated using Google technology. Copyright 2024 by Lovey Books Limited. Production copyright 2024 by Lovey Books Limited.